All right, guys, we're back with another episode today. And first, I want to give a shout out to Mike Roberts for making this podcast happen. Since I've known you in a very short time, like I was just telling Sonny before you got here, you seem to connect people more than companies that's sole purpose is to connect people.
Yeah.
And, Sonny and I, we've never met. I think we followed each other on Facebook maybe for some time, but it's really cool that you connect these people. And Sonny, from afar, I've seen a lot of your work. I don't know much about you, but it's all been very impressive. So guys, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having us, man. Yeah, very cool. Sure. Organically, and two people I respect in similar fields that I don't really understand. And so, cool that you guys wanted to both get together.
Yeah, so I want to ask you guys, how did you two first meet and what got you two connected?
I think you reached out when I was on the young team, right?
Yeah, so we had connected, if I'm not mistaken. It was not even because of the real estate stuff I was doing. It was because I was getting my real estate license. I remember I came into the young team because I was debating on looking at them to join as a team. You introduced me to the team. You were my first point of contact with young team. And it was just something like, I remember it was either that day or another time I had walked in, and it always left a impression in my head because in the young team, they've got that TV that had all the stats. And I looked up there, and it had only been it was like March or April, something like that. And he had closed like a stupid amount, had closings of that year. And I was like, well, I don't know about the team, but I know that this guy's on fire. So anything I could learn from Mike himself as an agent, is probably going to pay off.
And so were you a photographer at the time or no?
Still doing photography. Yeah. But that was when I was just getting my license, my real estate license then. And so, I was not all in on the photography. I was still hovering.
Testing the waters,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. Why do you think that was?
Not gonna lie, I had some pressure, some family pressure, kind of saying that basically the mentality was, well, I'm shooting these houses for people and then they get the payoff, the big payoff in terms of selling the house. So you know how to shoot the house. Why not just get your license and then do both and sell both, shoot and sell. And so that's what got me into it. And then took me 2-3 years of figuring out that's probably not the road I want to take. So.
And it's also a good lesson in there is that those are separate skills. Maybe to someone who's not in the industry, it might sound the same, but as you've done it, you can probably test too. You can just walk in there and be like, oh, I'll go shoot the house now.
Yeah, well, the thing about Sonny is he has all the skills, the personality. He could have been a very successful realtor. I just don't think you really wanted to.
Yeah, just it's. We'll put it this way: just because Michael Jordan's a great example, right? Just because you're good at basketball, which is a sport, doesn't mean you're going to be good at baseball or golf or any of these other things.
Sure.
So just because you're good at one thing doesn't mean it's going to translate to something else. And I just don't have the temperament to deal with some of the drama that you have to deal with being an
with
agent,
the client side.
know.
And I guess for you, it's interesting because on the other side of it, you were attempting to be a realtor out in San Diego, but it wasn't necessarily being a realtor that you didn't like. It was necessarily more the market, right?
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know that story, I always wanted to be in real estate. I don't know why. Just something about it attracted me. So when I was living, I don't even know, I'm getting old at this point. Back in 2009, I was in San Diego. I was like, I'll do dual career. I'll be a real estate agent. Got my license. Had a great coach out there, Coach Bob. Shout out, awesome mentor. But I tried to do it myself. Maybe I was young and whatever. I had some people tell me I should join a team and whatnot. And anyways, tried to forge a path myself, part-time. And, figuring it out, whatever. Didn't really, moving out there, you don't have now that I moved back, I grew up in Akron, so I didn't grow up in Shaker Heights where I live now, but close enough, right? That I knew people in the area, I knew the area and whatnot. Out there, I didn't really have that base of people and whatever. Was trying to do it part-time, which is a challenge. And I was 6 months to a year into it. I put one house under contract and fell apart, and I was like, forget it.
Yeah. So for both of you, what do you think is the takeaway for people that are kind of 1 foot in, 1 foot out in hindsight now?
Yeah, I mean, so funny enough, and I don't mean to make this the Ryan Young podcast, love you, brother, but it's about us today. But he gave me some advice early on. He's like, man, if you want to do this, you find a mentor. I'm going to show you how it's done. And if you do what I say, you'll be successful, but you can't be 1 foot. Not to say some people can't do it to a career, but much more challenging. So for me, I made the plunge, man. It was scary. I went in and I did everything everybody told me to, plus more.
Yeah.
And that's a big advice. I think a lot of people, they just kind of they get the advice, hey, do this. Okay, I'm going to do that. And then a week later, it's like, how'd that go? Well, I didn't do it. I'm going to do it. I'm thinking about it. It's like, nah.
And you can hear those words now.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And for me, like, I didn't have that comfortability. I had bills, I had whatever, it was like, I got however many months to make this happen. Otherwise, I'm going back to whatever I was going to go back to, human resources,
Something.
selling shoes, something I didn't want to be doing. Right.
Yeah.
So like that, like lit a fire underneath me.
Yeah, what do you think on that side?
I'd say the same. I'd say for people that have one foot in and out, the short story is you can't sustain it. It's just impossible. And because everything it ultimately comes down to time management. And even if you look at successful people, I think we live in an age now where you actually do have the benefit of you could live a life and actually master multiple things in life versus maybe in other ages or cultures or whatever. You didn't have that luxury. We have that now, but you still have to put an immense amount of effort into one thing to make that one thing pop. Because I think a good example is actually Jared Leto, both musician and actor, right? But if you notice, even in his career, he had to put acting on hold to make 30 Seconds to Mars pop. And then once he was able to build a certain amount of clout and leverage with that as a brand, then he could dip back into acting. But even now, he's you could argue he's good at both, but he can't do both simultaneously. If he's on tour with 30 Seconds to Mars, he's not acting. And then you see this break on and off that he does, which is cool, but you really need focus.
What were you saying?
Yeah.
I just got impressed with who walked by.
Oh yeah, there's gonna be some traffic, just so you guys know.
Who was it?
Hey,
Sorry, I
we're
got a
in an
little
active
distracted.
studio. There's some people
I got
walking
a little
around.
distracted. But anyways, we'll talk about that later. No, I 100% agree with that. And I think that's one of those things. I was watching a video yesterday about like 7 streams of income and billionaires, whoever, that's like what they work on. And, to get to that point. But obviously you can't get to that point before you master, like you said, because the key of that is like they're not so actively involved on a day-to-day basis. I would think the majority on all of those things, right? They're leveraged. They have people.
Right. They're leveraging their money. They're leveraging their time.
100%.
But in order to have that nest egg that you can do that with, you need to have focused on arguably one thing.
Yeah.
So, which is funny because that goes back to Gary Keller and his book, One Thing,
100%,
where he talks about. So.
And it's hard not to get sidetracked because I think we could all
Very.
agree, even in just one thing, like just being a realtor, just photography, just social media, there are so many things in that are their own skill sets as well, that it's like if you go too wide, you're never going to have the real effort to make something nurture into one big stream, as you said.
Yeah. My problem was always boredom. And I think that's probably why I ended up, I'm sure there's a lot of people that can relate where you seem to be bouncing off of different things and not quite finding your path, your way. And if you really look at your own behavior, you'll see that really what it is you're never ever giving anything an actual chance for you to master it because you hit a certain level of, well, I've mastered it to a degree, but now you got to do like this last 10% of like real mastery, which is like in these little small increments of improvement, whether it's learning how to be a better salesman or a better marketer or whatever it is. And sometimes it's stuff that like isn't even natural to you or you just don't want to do.
Yeah,
and
100%.
You got to do it.
I mean, that's huge, right? Because like, you get to that point where you're finally starting to see some success and you're like, I've done it. I know it. I know everything, right? But the people I think that have the most success, like humble themselves, right? And they're continually learning and refining the process and figuring out like, okay, where are my inefficiencies, which is not like sexy, right?
Yeah, it's the board.
Yeah.
And like systems work is something that, I was telling Sonny, I went to this conference with a bunch of other like media companies, editors, things like that. And what was fascinating was how many people, they were nice to me, but they were mind blown about Katie. They're like, oh, who's this systems person you hired? I'm like, well, she's my girlfriend. But it was interesting how many people in there said that the biggest work they were avoiding was like it's like you said, the boring work. It's not the close a big deal, get a giant project. It's really, hey, maybe you need to have an automation in your email where it summarizes a Zoom call. And it's like, that's not sexy or fun, but that's the thing that actually causes that like pouring of the cup where the stream goes down.
Yeah. And if I can give a shout out to both of you guys, you have both helped me immensely in slightly different ways. Like Sonny, we've been working together. He comes in, he takes these ideas, and I don't know how he does it, where I basically just tell him as he shows up, like, we're going to shoot this video, and he somehow makes my dream happen, and it comes out amazing. I get amazing feedback, but it's like, if I didn't have Sonny, that would never happen. If I had a different person that, like, really needed me to, fine-tune that a little bit or whatever, And then with you, when I met you, other people I knew that had been working with you for a little while, I needed someone to come in and basically just take it over, hand it off, consistency and whatever. I was doing some of the stuff maybe that we do together, but not on the level. So that for me is like, now I just need to find those things in other parts of the business. Like this, I feel like it's a little bit easier and a little more exciting for me to like dive in and try to tackle.
Yeah.
It's some of the like, the figuring out the automation and emails and all this kind of stuff. That kind of like,
Yeah, for both of you, what do you think of your whole career up until now? What was probably the worst shiny object that you ever got in front of where you thought this is worth stopping the thing that's going well? I should step aside and give love to this thing that now in hindsight, you're like, why did I ever go sidetracked?
I mean, part of me thinks my whole journey with trying to be a realtor in general was that shiny object, because really the motivation is that I got sucked into the mental, or, the promise of the money, the paycheck, the deal, and it all came kind of like crashing down in a good but like weird way when I had closed a deal off market, and it was the biggest check that I've ever received at one time, and I literally woke up the next day and I was like, shit, I have to do this all again tomorrow, and had zero motivation to want to go do it, which really showed me that like my motivation isn't the money. And it really made me go, well, crap, if it's not the money and you can't find something that's can drive the passion in real estate. Like I like real estate as an industry, like so many things about it. But as being an agent, if I can't find the will to do what I need to do every single day, then it's going to fail. And the ironic part is that all the things that I learned from the business end of lead gen and all this other stuff, I remember I gave my license back this year, and then I started doing all the things that I was supposed to be doing for the real estate, but for my own business. And then it literally just went, yeah. And I was like, oh my gosh, but it didn't feel like work. And that's what's kind of blows my mind.
Like that. You know what's funny about that too? That makes me think, and I haven't talked to him forever, but we had a young lady I knew from back in the day. I worked at Nordstrom. Her name was Chrissy. And she thought she wanted to get into real estate. She came, she joined the team, she left. And it was like, it's always a bummer when people leave. But she said to Ryan and I, when she left, she was like, I learned so much from the team. And now she has her own, like, very, like, thriving makeup business in Cleveland. And, like, I'm just, like, super happy to see. But, sometimes you come in, you learn those, like, foundational things from the industry. It's just not quite the right.
Yeah. And for me, the biggest benefit was that now I have a direct experiential understanding of what a realtor goes through. And so that's been the biggest gold nugget for me, is that I can now walk into a house, if an agent I've never worked with before, but I can now talk the way they talk. I understand exactly where they're coming from and can communicate more effectively because of that. And they don't go like, oh, this guy just he's just looking for another paycheck because he wants to shoot my house or something like that. It's like, no, it's like, let's go deep on this.
You've played both sides, yeah.
And he understands the
very
trials
helpful.
and tribulations. We'll sit outside.
Yeah.
I think at the last house,
Right.
we were outside for like 45 minutes trying to figure out how we get investors to play nice, you know what I mean?
Right.
Be on timeline and whatnot. So, but we both understand that. So it's kind of cool to have him have that perspective. But I think for me, like, it's just, I'm always kind of one of those where like, I'm not super organized. 40 years old this year, I got diagnosed with ADD, which is like, thank you. I'm not like, just like, I knew something was going on. So I think I'm always just kind of getting drug along by like what my business is currently.
Yeah.
And I unfortunately fall a lot of times into like there's a lot of agents out there that just do high-end luxury real estate or do, a certain area or do investors. I like to have a blend of all of them, right? So I do work with investors, whether it be rentals or renovate, flipping, if you will. I work with people in, just typical buying and selling. I really want to grow my business in the heights and be like a preeminent name, market share, whatnot. But I oftentimes get drug around and go, okay, this is really hot right now. I'm going to work with all these investors. Or this is like, I've got these couple of buyers. I'm just going to focus on them. And then all of a sudden you're sitting there like, crap, I'd let this all fall off. So now I got to build that back up. Right.
Yeah.
So I like having that pillars of the business, but it's like, I'm just constantly like chasing the squirrel around. I feel like, I'm really good when I focus in and I know what the objective is and I've got somebody and we're lined up or we're on the same page. But then, I have a tendency to let that other kind of stuff fall off in the meantime.
So yours isn't one big object. It's almost like you're so in one thing that you don't see the 30,000 foot.
100%. So I think for me, it's like continuing to build the leverage so that I have people and there's like checks and balances to the business. So like, I brought in Steve Billington, I brought in Matt Kovac, these guys that are local to me in can help with a lot of these things. And it's just like finding the right partnerships,
Yeah.
leverage and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, how much do you think you guys have learned from your clients themselves? Because I think that's one thing I probably don't talk enough about is like being in my position, you get a lot of trust with people you work with and you see things that really have nothing to do with your part of the job. It just shows you how they work. And I think there's kind of this mastermind effect where when you can see what everyone does right, you can also diagnose what everyone does wrong. And I like what you were saying, Sonny, where it's like, you know, all this business advice that was given to me as a realtor can be applied as a photographer.
Yeah, that was a big aha moment when I realized I was doing lead gen but for photography and not for real estate. But yeah, I mean, there's so much that I think you can learn from the clients that you work with. I mean, I was just working with Kelsey Wozniak today, and she was showing me how to find the trending audio on Instagram and all this other stuff. And, you know, but it's also good to obviously listen to the client too, because for me, it's like I'm providing a service. And so I saw a video the other day, and it was a smug guy asking Steve Jobs, like, why doesn't he make better stuff, basically, and push the performance of the tech. And Steve Jobs basically came back with, because I'm trying to start with the customer first, and what do they need, and what are they going to use today, and then if I can make the highest tech around that, then it's a success. Not let me just make the greatest computer of all time and then try to sell that or convince people that they need it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I think you have to listen to your clients in terms of what they actually need. And, you know, there's a fine line of like providing them with the right services and then doing what you need to do.
How have you balanced that? Because like as a guy, as I see you, you have a very high quality product. Like all the photography looks crazy. How do you almost like meet them on earth sometimes? Because I'm sure you come in there with this, let's call it 100 skill set, but their understanding of your skill set might be a 40. Like, how do you try to match those two?
This I don't have much trouble with it, but I've had recent trouble with it. And I had another photographer. His advice was like, you just need to like be confident in yourself and understand and figure out, I guess, how to portray it in a non-douchey way, for lack of a better word, but that like you're the expert in the room. Yeah. That's the reason why they're hiring you, is because you know how to do the video, not them. You know how to do the photos, not them. So just understand how to talk, and anytime they want to go in a direction where you just intuitively know that's not the direction we want to go, be that expert voice to reel them back in. And it's the same thing with when it comes to being an agent, you know, like homeowners could sell houses themselves. Like there's plenty of them that do it, but the ones that don't, they're paying agents an extraordinary amount of money for something, right? It's not just to put it on the MLS, it's to negotiate, it's to do all these other things, to understand the market. And it's funny because you'll see a lot of clients want to then, they're going to hire a realtor, but then they're going to act like the realtor the entire time through the process, instead of just like letting it go and letting the expert that you just hired do what they need to do. So
it's all interesting stuff you're saying. Like, it's like, I see that constantly. When I came into the industry, I don't know if you guys are big on like assessment, personality tests, whatever.
The disc stuff,
like
yeah.
Disc stuff, right? And it was a very low on the D, which is like
driver,
right? And if anything, I was like a bit of a pushover. You know, I always came from like a hospitality, like people pleasing, whatever. So I've had to like increase that, and in fact, as I retake it, like it scores much higher, but it's not like comfortable to me.
Interesting.
Generally, right? So like I'll have times where I almost go like too directive with people now, and especially having worked with like investors, that's different, right? It's business, right?
Yeah,
so
they're very
whatever, and, you know. But then sometimes I'll come in with that full head of steam to a typical like buyer or seller, and they're kind of like almost offended, right? So it's like it's really hard to find. Yeah, 100%. We're the expert. That's why they want our assistance. That's why we're making that money, right? And when properly utilized, like we're well worth it, I believe.
Yeah.
And but sometimes it's finding, you know, obviously you got to understand who you're dealing with, get to know them better first, and what's the best way to like give that advice. And sometimes you kind of get to give the advice and back off and be like, hey, you're the boss. I always tell my clients, at the end of the day, you're the boss. You're gonna tell me what we're doing. As long as it's within reason, it's not unethical, like I'll do it.
Right.
But here's what I recommend, right?
Yeah.
And I think you saw a lot of in the last few years, the market was so crazy. There was less recommendations. Just gotta like pick your price. Let's put it on the market. It sells. You know, no problem.
Happens.
Yeah.
Now it's like people are really having to refine those skills again.
Yeah.
But that's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting to see how that correlates, I suppose.
Yeah, what do you think is the big thing you've had to learn about dealing with people of all personalities? Like, because I'm sure, like you said, because so how do you go from in one conversation talking to an investor who's arguing about $600 worth of paint to then going to someone who's like, hey, I really have this unlimited budget. I need to love this home and know my kids are going to have a good childhood. Like for you as Mike, how do you kind of switch brain modes when you're having those kind of conversations, maybe in the same 2 hours?
100%. So that's always been like my strength, like growing up. Ever since I've worked different industries, I went to school for hospitality management. I've worked in hotels, restaurants, retail, whatever. My strength has always been relating to people. Like I can kind of, I don't want to say size people up. That sounds bad, but size people up, and get a whatever of like who they are and what's the best way to like communicate with them.
So for someone watching who might struggle, let's say they're like a systems person, not someone like us. They're really good at the back end of their business. Sales make them nervous. Talking to clients make them nervous. What advice would you give them to learn how to kind of feel people out?
Honestly, just like shut up, right? Like I think that's the problem. Like most of us, unfortunately, like we're so in our own heads, in our own world, that even if we're not really thinking about it or attempting to, we're making it about ourselves, right? So I do this too. Sometimes I'm having a conversation and all of a sudden, and like Sonny's talking, and I'm thinking about the next thing I'm going to say.
Yeah, we all do it.
Right?
But yeah, I mean,
especially when you're like new and you're nervous or whatever, you want to come off sounding good, right? So like, I think you could go really far by just slowing down, listening, hearing what people say, having them elaborate, asking about checking in with them from time to time, because people like that, when people do that to me, I'm like, oh my God, thank you so, you know what I mean? Like, when somebody like takes the time to actually listen, like how often in your day do you feel like people like actually take the time and are truly listening and trying to get you to like elaborate on how you're feeling?
Yeah.
We're all so busy. We're all stressed out. You know what I mean? Like, so I think that's the biggest thing. If you could just start there by like really showing, and that's a complaint I get. Anytime I get like an orphan client, as I would call them, they don't like their last realtor, they come to me. It's always like, this person just wasn't listening to me. If it's a buyer, they're like, they were just showing me houses. They weren't listening to what I was saying.
Yeah, they're like, oh, here's another one.
Yeah, for sure. Right. So, sellers too, whoever it is, you know what I mean? So, and I think that's something I struggle with. I get going 100 miles an hour, and then whenever I have challenges, it's usually that, right? Like I didn't really find out what was important to my client. I didn't check back in with it, because that's the other thing. We got to check back in with people, right?
Yeah.
Like when houses were selling in 2 hours, maybe didn't need to check back in that much. Like they were just happy. They were like, this is amazing and whatever. But I mean, I think that's in anything, right? Any relationship, you got to make sure people feel heard. You're doing your best to like, to do what they want, you know what I mean? And you're a team. And to your point, sometimes I feel like I know better, but as long as I'm giving them that information, and that's my job, I tell people my job is to give you my experience, interpret the market, blah, blah, blah. Of course, I'm really good at that. What you decide to do with that is up to you. It's not for me to dictate, right?
Yeah. What's something you two both think would surprise people to know that they find valuable about your service? Like, not necessarily what you advertise or even we make videos or market about, but something that you think your clients would say was valuable in the experience.
That's a good question.
I don't know.
Do you know?
I don't think I've ever thought about it.
I could answer for you, I suppose. I mean, like, I think
Repeat the question again?
So what do you think are things that your clients really value about you that you probably never market or advertise about, but they would all be like, I really like when Sonny does this?
I mean, I can answer for Sonny because I'm his client.
Sure. Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
That one's easy. I think for me, it's like, I just feel like Sonny really tries to work with me and meet me where I'm at, right? He tries to, and then there's great photographers out there. There's great videographers. I've worked with several, great images close to what Sonny does. I think Sonny is honestly like the best in the area, but like there's some that are close,
for sure. Easily.
But I think for Sonny, it's like a collaboration, and I really appreciate that. That's how I operate.
And I think that's the type of person that I generally vibe with the most.
Yeah,
is people that are more collaborative, because I read this thing a long time ago that kind of sectioned people into these categories and gave them a number rating. It was like these 6s, 7s, 8s, and 9s. And 6s were like these, I don't know how to say it, supplicative people, where they're always looking for approval. They're trying to like, do you like what I'm doing? Blah, 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 blah. 7s are, what were they? Combative. Then 8s are competitive. And then 9s were collaborative. And you could identify a person basically because they're playing a value game anytime they get in a room with each other. And so if you can identify which one they are, it helps you deal with that person better. Because I actually used that to deal with a not so great boss one time, and so I understood he was a combative boss, and so he's trying to make he creates value for himself by pushing others down, and then competitive people will create value for themselves by making everything a game, so they can beat you at it in front of everybody, and then that's how they
where
raise
it's more about them going up. It doesn't matter what happens.
And there was never a perfect 10, but the closest you could get was a collaborative person where we're not really competing or being combative. We're just trying to talk, create, whatever it is. Cool. And so, I like collaborative efforts as well, which that's probably the sole reason of why I couldn't find much joy from the agency side. Yeah. It's because I was having a hard time finding how can I make this process collaborative when I'm dealing with 4 egos.
So you felt like you
have different objectives.
You were stuck around that 6, 7 with a lot of them, probably. Right?
Oh yeah, probably more. Most of them are 7s.
Well, I think that's the other thing for Sonny that's unique in what he does. Is most people, I mean, everybody's got their own business, right, and how they do things. Most people, it's like, this is how we do it. Here's my. I know you sent it to me, but I've never even looked at your pricing before. It's like everybody's got like, here's for this many photos, virtual staging, blah, blah, blah. And that's cool. That's fine, But with Sonny, it's like, how can we expand on this? How can we make this even cooler? Like, I get energy from other people that think big, want to do differently. And that's how Sonny is, right? We sit around and we're like, what else could we be doing? Yeah.
Yeah.
Is this interesting for you based off before Mike got here, when you were like, I know I need to double down on more of these things? And
for sure.
And it's like now the feedback from a client is Sonny's personality.
Yeah, which is, it's funny because now that I'm thinking about like what other things people might value, it's sometimes, I think it comes down to that being able to, and I'm from my background is service industry as well. So in that industry, you have to listen. You have to be able to listen to somebody and actually get them what they want and need. And it was funny because I work with an agent who, I go out of town or I'm on vacation, whatever, they use somebody else. And they came back to me and they said, you know what? I worked with this other person. They're cheaper than you. Their photography's fine, but like I still come back to you just for this one little thing. It was just because the way I organized the photos.
Oh, funny.
Because I guess just some other people just take shots in whatever random order and send them to him in whatever random order. And just the fact that I tried to take the time to organize the photos in a way where I'm walking through the house so that the agent, maybe it was a time thing. Maybe they didn't have to then reorganize them.
Just how they click their buttons.
On the MLS. I don't know what it was. But like sometimes I think, it's not... At the end of the day, if you're operating your output in terms of the product at a high level... that doesn't become the issue anymore. I think it comes down to just the service. Yeah. The overall service and how you're communicating with people, trying to listen at least. I'm not perfect. Yeah. So,
but is this interesting for you that when we were talking about, like this fall, winter, it's going to be like brand Sonny more. In your head, was it more of like, I need to talk about my photography? Like when we were talking earlier, was that more where your head was at?
Yeah. Just talk about more of my thoughts. And then now that I do have that experience as being an agent, try to meet agents there and bring them into my world since I've already been in their world and try to communicate how like some of these things are important, or like, as you know, I like to challenge thinking a lot. And so, I'll say some pretty outlandish stuff sometimes, where I think the last thing I said to Mike was, I think an agent can sell a house with 5 photos. I don't think you need 30. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of agents who would be like, oh, I could never do that. I'm like, I don't know.
Sometimes I see intrigue, right?
Sometimes I just see the game differently versus other people, because I do pay attention like Gary Vee does, like to what people are doing and reacting to.
Yeah, because there's some crazy stat that like most people do not swipe past the first 5 usually, because that's...
Oh, I didn't even know that.
I don't remember what the number is. I'll throw it on the screen. But I know there was something where it was like, I remember there was an agent out in California was like, she made a video about how the first, I think it was 3 or 5 you pick, because either on Zillow or Realtor.com, it only shows those. And it was like how many people, it was how many people view listings and never actually click expand. They're just going, 1, 2, okay. And then they start reading.
Wow.
Huh. Yeah. But that's interesting. I mean, I'm backing you up. I think you might be right on that.
Well, and I think it just comes down to like what, I don't know, being an agent really made me, in my opinion, made me learn what it is that drives a buyer to write an offer. And it's not, I tell this to agents all the time. It's like, why are we making a property video? It's not to sell the house. You know what I mean? Because it doesn't, I just genuinely believe it doesn't matter. You could have Steven Spielberg create the most awesome video that you've ever made in your life. And if you price it too high, it's not going to matter. Yeah. So there's something that overrides even media when it comes to selling real estate, at least. And so I'm more interested in, so now my focus has been, now that I feel I understand that, well, then what do we do media for? Why are we doing this? And in my opinion, we're now going into this phase, this era of, well, we're using it for branding content.
Branding. Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's why we make a property video. It's not to sell the house. It's because it's positioning you in 100%. A certain way.
Yeah. I think that's the bigger thing for me. It's like why I invest more money, because to your point, I could just go pay an inexpensive photographer, take 10 pictures, and
for sure
probably would sell.
Yeah.
But then what am I going to have to show my future clients? What are people seeing that are then reaching out to me? So it is more, I think, a lot about just branding.
Well, and that leads to that conversation we had before we started. It's you do not need to be on social media, and you don't need to be a marketing expert and be a branding expert to be good at the business of real estate.
100%.
You can make tons of money without doing any of those things. The question becomes, how big do you want to be? How far do you want to take it? And in order to get to a certain level, now you're going to have to start dipping into this thing called branding, which is, I think, the best synonym for that is just reputation.
Yeah.
You know, what is your reputation? And you can only convey that by pushing out content to show people what your reputation is and your image is consistently over and over and over 100%. And over again.
Well, you guys both know because you helped me with this, but obviously, like, I've invested quite a bit more recently into my branding and mainly social media.
Question for you.
Yeah.
What have you seen that do now that you've started it? And how long have you started it?
This is an amazing question, right? Because people will ask me that, like, are you seeing an increase in your business? I'm like, it's really hard to say. I don't think it correlates that, right? Like, I don't just work with you for a couple of months or do a video with you and all of a sudden that correlates to like a direct sale. It's just not quite. I wish there was a way I could better analyze that. But what I can tell you is that since I've been doing more videography with you, which I think has been really since last winter when we did
I think so, yeah.
We did a video where like I was Cousin Eddie from
that
was Elf. They were both in the same one, right? And that was fun, and that was kind of an idea I had. I showed up with Sonny with all these props and we made a
chocolate sauce. It was really weird for a second,
you know, and then I did a mailer out of it. It was great. You know? And then I met you, and we started doing more consistency with the which, like, ever since I've been doing both of those, people, when I see them, are generally coming up to me and go, I love what you're doing with your social media. And it's funny because sometimes I go, oh, yeah, you've seen, like, the videos with, you know, whatever it is. Yeah. And, like, no, I'm talking about the Jurassic Park one. Oh, that's cool. Or I go, oh, did you see my Jurassic Park one? No, I'm talking about the ones you did with Genesis Construction. You know, so it's I don't know how that's working.
Topic. People watch topics. So yes, they're friends with you, but it's also like there are some people that will only watch like renovation content. Interesting. And you're showing up because you're creating renovation content.
So it's like an algorithm based off what they're searching.
Like most of it, like Facebook and Instagram are the most human-based, meaning like if I know Mike might see my post no matter what topic it is because we're friends. But if you look at like kind of as I was explaining before with how I distribute this podcast, I post a long form on YouTube with very low expectations of engagement. People who like me or may know us will watch it, but overall, that's not my goal. I take 30 short clips from that because what I'm testing is all of the different topics we talk about here. Because on my YouTube, I don't have Mike or Sonny that know me. It's solely discovered based off topic. So then I'm seeing what topics are working the best and then curating those to, okay, now I will put those on my more social timelines, which I would say like Facebook, Instagram fall into.
Okay.
So that's where like a lot of times when you and I are doing our strategy sessions, like, yes, I'm trying to get the stories out of you or like the advice out of you. But when I organize it, I'm like, the goal of this video is one topic. Like just stay on this topic. And I know you can run into a second one here, but that's another topic for another video.
Yeah. It's really interesting to do. And it's interesting to see like, so I have what you're doing for me. I have what you're doing for me. And then I like to do some of my own, which lends itself sometimes to more like family or like communal.
More personal.
Like, you know, more personal, whatever, which I think is a nice blend. Like people will say like, well, shouldn't you have it separate? It's like, no, I like people
Yeah,
But what I do, I
agree.
think it's better they know who I am. It's like, hey, if they think I'm obnoxious and they want to work with me, that's
Yeah.
cool. It's better we know that up front.
for sure.
Because there's
for
certain
sure.
people, they seem to be attracted, and want to work with me and whatever. But it's even interesting, like, which content plays better on which outlets, right?
Yeah.
Like certain things play way better on Facebook.
And then you go to Instagram and it's got
Like on
10.
Instagram, it's nothing, right? Or like, or vice versa, or certain stuff on TikTok.
Yeah.
And so, like, anyways, I'm a big believer in, like, man, let's just do it all. And
Because that's the other thing
Yeah.
too, is like you don't know who's watching silently, and like that's a big thing I've noticed this
Hands
year.
down.
Is like usually when people first start, like let's say they've semi-created content or they do some here and there, then they turn on the lever of like let's say 3 to 4 week consistently month over month. That's when people start having this effect of like I'm seeing all of it. And they tell you that in person, but you're like, you've never liked the post, you've never commented. And even me at networking events, I'll get like home inspectors or lenders. They're like, dude, I love what you're doing. And I go look and I'm like, yeah, they don't follow me.
Yeah.
it's
I
wild.
learned that a
Yeah.
long time ago on Facebook when I started doing like photography. When I first started, I got hit up like randomly by a guy that was like, oh, because I had taken a picture of a church, and he's like, I actually go to that church. They want to know if they could use your picture. And I went back to the post and I was like, you never engaged, never did anything. And it's such a crucial, I guess, rule to remember is that you just don't know who's watching, and you can't quantify that, which is a huge problem. But that doesn't mean you stop putting out content. It just means you keep going, and you have to really trust the process, because I literally have gotten 2 or 3 referrals this year alone for pretty big projects, and they came from people I've never met.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how did you even know my name? It's like, oh, this guy. And I'm like, I don't even know who that is. I'm like, who's...
So I get it a lot. Yeah, I've had that a few times on my Instagram where I'll get like 3 new followers, and you can tell they're all in the same office, but it'll be like Syracuse, New York. And I'm like, I've never been there. I don't go there. But all it takes is one mutual connection to get served your content, and then they can find it valuable. And so like that's the thing I would tell a lot of people out there if they're watching this is like if your goal is with organic content, you've got to just solely focus on like who are my people? What do they want to hear me talk about? And then how can I show who I am? I think if you cover those, you're good. I think where most people get the headache is they try to take things like paid ads or like email or automations, and they try to force all of those goals into social media. And when you do that, you kind of create this weird trap where it's like, asking one assistant to play 10 roles. It's like they might burn out. Whereas if you can kind of start segmenting like, hey, with my organic, the goal is just to get the people to know me, trust me, and see my opportunities. And then with email, I'm inviting them to my events. I'm getting them in front of me where I can shake their hands and meet a friend. And then if your real only goal is like, I want to make money and sell, I mean, you have to put your money where your mouth is and turn the ads on. Like,
Gotcha.
that.
It's interesting what you just said about like, oh, you're talking about, getting it out there, whatever. It's like, I've noticed, like we went a little heavy on some of the videos with Genesis for like a week, right? And I had someone come up to me and go, oh, you don't sell traditional real estate. Was that my block party? I'm like, no. It's like, so it's funny because based on, they just catch a couple of things.
They have
then they get a preconceived
perception of you.
notion, right? So it's really hard. I mean, because who knows now that we're doing the other ones with like more traditional stuff, like maybe she just doesn't see it. You know what I mean? So like,
and I think there's a bigger lesson in this, which is like, you have to remember to show all of what you do. And then this is the double-edged sword that like you and I are in right now. And Sonny, like, I hope when you start like creating, you'll feel this. You get this weird social hamster wheel where you're like, okay, now I'm showing everyone what I do. I have to keep showing everyone what I do. I have to keep doing interesting things. And it's like hilarious. Everyone always hears Mr. Beast in this podcast where someone's like, how do you make the best videos on earth? And he goes, do more interesting things. And it's like, at the end of the day, if you accomplish that, everything else can solve itself, assuming the skill is already there. And from my experience, that's where a lot of people struggle. Because I came from paid ads before I ever started this company. And I just turned mine on like 2 weeks ago. And it's such a different function of posting organically. Like I can be way more direct. I can call out pain points that I know are actually hurting them. But I'm not worried, oh, Mike might see this. I'm not worried that my grandma might see this. I am targeting title, job, real estate broker.
Specific,
Yeah, like real estate broker or real estate team leader only. So I know that I'm only talking to that person.
Okay.
And it's a very good practice for me because I'm so used to going to like multiples that now that I'm forced to talk to one, now when I'm going and making my organic content, I'm like, who am I making this for? And that gives me way more clarity because like just to share with everyone, the data that came back was wild. I made my videos. They were very Alex Hormozy-esque to describe it. And I was getting male attention. I think it was like $33 for 1,000 views. And then for females, it was like 90, which is way too expensive. I mean, that is like horrendous. But what I found out is I was coming off too masculine and too strong. And so what the females were doing is just not engaging with it. Whereas the men were engaging with it, but
that's what they respond to,
yeah,
right?
but of the females that did engage, they booked more than the men. So what it taught me was that there are certain females that respond to a very strong masculine tone,
Right.
and those videos will work for that. For the men, I'm getting their attention, I'm not converting them, which means I'm pulling them in, but I'm not keeping them there.
So something else in the copy and the delivery is not
Because the
translating.
thing that Katie and I talked about afterwards, and Xander, my paid ads guy, is that the pain points certain people will work with me for are not the same others will. Like a lot of, let's just say the traditional, even women that have more masculine traits, like they're in more that driver personality, they want me to save time, make it easy, and go quick. There are others that are really like Katie, organized, that we're going to plan for an hour. I'm going to take another 1 to 3 hours to make their content calendar. And then they're going to spend 1 to 3 hours writing their own notes on the notes. And so it's like when I'm thinking of who are my two customers, sure, they're both a real estate broker, but those are two completely different people with different pain points.
Gotcha. And different processes and different, it goes back to that personality test type of thing, which seems to be, that might be a problem I'm running into right now, is that what's the best way to describe it? I'm finding people that it to me, it's coming off micromanaging.
Yeah.
And I like collaborative work. I don't think collaboration and micromanage are the same thing. And so, but I'm finding that sometimes I'll get a client where that's how it's feeling to me. It's feeling like, oh, it's coming off a little micromanaging, and I just want to be able to take whatever idea you have, take it, and just go execute in the way that I see fit, given what I walk into with the house. You know, especially when it comes to video.
100%.
Yeah, I think it'll help. Like, just so you know, like that's half the reason why I like doing this podcast is like you're now getting to say all this for the first time.
Yeah.
And I think Mike and I from the other side, just like outsiders, could agree that like if that was how you pushed a lot of your messaging, I think you would get a lot more of the people you claim you want to work with.
Well, and that becomes my question to you then. So because I think we can all agree that there's clients we like working with, there's clients we seem to thrive working with, and there's clients that it's just a disaster working with. So how do you just accept? Do you go out of your way to actually position yourself to not work with those clients?
Yeah, like I took a business coach's advice in January, and it was like there would be certain videos where the task was piss off your current clientele, but serve them in the same video, which is like a very hard proposition.
Whoa. Yeah, I was gonna say.
And so the one that I first tested with is like, stop saying your name, stop saying your brokerage, like just say what you're going to say. And I had like 9 clients who did that in every video after telling them multiple times, like, don't do that. And I posted it at like 8:37 on a Saturday because I was nervous and I just wanted to like turn the phone off, but I didn't. And what was crazy was no one actually gave me real negative feedback. I had some of those 9 that already do it text me and Katie and go, hey, if we're doing that, can you maybe just edit it out moving forward? It's a habit of mine.
Oh, gotcha.
And so what actually caused them to change was the social accountability of seeing everyone agree with me and go, yeah, I hate that.
Oh, wow.
So it wasn't actually hearing it from my voice.
Powerful.
It was understanding from the group.
You know, it's funny because you mentioned that to me before. I think you've told me
Yeah.
on the compliment end, like, hey, you're pretty good at just rambling on video, but we need to work on your hooks. I didn't think much of it, and then I like watched the video, and I may have sent it to you or saved it for myself, where the guy's like, most important thing you need to do is work on your hook. So I was like, keep thinking that now. I'm like, okay, stop saying I'm Mike Roberts. I usually used to always say, I'm Mike, chicken in and blah, 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 you know, or I'm here and something. So,
and it's natural. Like I still do it. Like in
Yeah.
most of my videos, it's known, cut this out.
Yeah.
Like just get,
It's going to happen.
just get rid of it. But I think the bigger thing is when you start saying what you love, when you describe, I love working with Mike for these reasons, someone who micromanages is going to say, I'm not dealing with Sonny.
Yeah.
He's going to want me to participate and be engaged and share my own ideas. And for you, you probably don't want that. But if you have someone out there who's like, man, my photographer is a bump on a log. The house looks great, but like this isn't my goal. And you're making videos saying, hey, let's do more than the house. 100%. Do you see how the magnet then starts pushing towards Sonny? But the first thing you have to do is take the lead on what is the thing. Like
basically tell the people what I want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like for me, I had a real struggle of like I wanted people who were willing to be opinionated, not in a bad way, like don't just start arguments, but like I need people who believe in what they say because it will do better. Like no one likes getting on social media and watching a video where someone's like, maybe this is how I feel, maybe it's not. I'm going to show you both sides. You're going to scroll away.
Yeah.
Whereas when someone makes a hard statement, even if you hate it, I want to hear you defend it now.
Right.
And a lot of times, like even for me personally, I do change my opinion on those because I'm like, I hate their hook. I need to hear their reasons. I hear their reasons and I'm like, okay, that actually challenged my own thought. But for them to have made that video, they probably had their creative team asking them, like, what's something you strongly believe in that you know is going to sting people a little bit. Yeah. But if you say the rest of the video, you know it will serve them. And that's like a premise I challenge anyone watching to go for is like, how can you make a video that's going to upset your clients and help them at the same time? Because it gets you into this habit of saying the confrontational thing that 5 down the line, you might even be saying anything controversial, but someone could go, wow, Sonny speaks with conviction.
Well, and ultimately you're doing it to actually help and actually grow. And the sad part is that some people don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And I don't want to work with people that don't want to continually push things. But in order to continually push things, you have to keep challenging yourself, trying new things, all this other stuff. So it's interesting that you say that because, I think if you put it out there and people don't respond to it, and you know that it came from a good place, you know that if they actually follow the advice, they'll thrive, not go back to something whatever. Sometimes you just outgrow clientele or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean, like one big one that I posted like 2 months ago, it was just a raw file of me stuttering like an idiot. But I realized like it wasn't for new clients, it was for existing ones. Because I was like, I feel like I work with a lot of people who are trying to be perfect for us.
Right.
Like, do not be perfect for us. Like, trust us to make you perfect. And there was this huge shift where I just posted that video and it got no likes for like days. And I was like, fuck, these are like my big platforms.
I just pissed people
And what was
off.
crazy, then someone references it. A home inspector I work with goes, guys, if you don't believe me, like Alex made a good video, like the raw files are going to be rough. And I was like, well, glad you watched it, but you know.
I'm glad I don't see like everything you shoot. I'm sure we'd be terrible.
Oh, yeah. I mean, seriously, I mean, it's clients in all industries, especially when it comes to photography, like they want to see the raw files and you're just like, I probably don't know really any photographer that's like, I'll do it. It's like, no, you just need to trust that it's going to end the way it's going to end. And that's also like, that's what your portfolio is there for. You know what I mean? Like if you hire a wedding photographer and they've got a certain style, hopefully you know that that's the style you're going to get. You know what I mean? And you just need to trust the process because some of the stuff's rough.
That's funny.
I mean, we could probably have some awesome blooper reels.
Yeah, that'd be good. I always think
if you want it,
compiled after a while.
I'll give it to you, man. Yeah, for sure.
Would be good, but and that's why I like how you do your videos because I think everybody's different, right? Like some people, I worked with the guy who did a video one time. It came out okay. You know, it was very like, okay, now we're gonna sit here and you're gonna say this. I didn't quite like your, what's the word?
Inflection. Yeah.
I like your inflection there, and by the end of it, I'm like, fuck. I'm sorry. I was like, this is like torture to me.
Yeah.
I didn't think I came off as authentic. And that's something for me, like in anything, like whatever I do, I'm just trying to be authentic, right? And so like, I didn't like that. It didn't match with me. But with you, when we work together, it's like, just go off the cuff, run with it. And like, I can talk. Like that's one thing I can do. I'm very passionate about what I do. And these conversations, you know, we have plenty of long conversations. We were saying that one day we were sitting out front of this house. I was like, I wish Alex was here. This would have been a bit great.
Yeah, the conversation we had, it should have just been mic'd up and
recorded.
recorded.
Man, if mic'd up recording this is like, you know.
And I think there's a lesson in there for everyone, which is like, as much as like we spend, you know, usually like a fully focused hour on strategy, we're also filming, we're also talking in between the camera on and off. Yeah. There are still things I could not prompt Mike to say. Yeah. Like I couldn't. Like these are just things that have been in your head for years. Right. And maybe a prompt got you close to it, but you actually going in and just rambling gets that out. And that's what I wish everyone we work with could hear me say is like, don't make perfect files for us. Like work on your one little part of like, hey, I didn't say this line right. Let me retry that line. You don't have to make the whole video.
Again,
Well, I think the context matters too. It's like, you know, because I when it comes to the social media game, I've really been trying to kind of, I think you actually brought it up and it's a perfect little triangle. I feel like there's like a triangle of content and it's like you've got this really professional polished looking stuff, which is what I feel like I excel at. Then you've got documentary type of stuff and then you've got personal stuff. Yeah. And they all have value, but they all have their place in terms of like how you should, like you don't want to sound like a Leonardo DiCaprio type actor when you're talking about your family.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's just like you said, it's not going to come off authentic. And so like to have the natural stuff in there, it's fitting. Yeah. So it just depends on what you're doing, you know, I would argue.
Yeah.
100%.
Gentlemen, I do think we're going to have to wrap this up. This one flew by. But
I know,
for everyone listening, Sonny, if they need to step up their photography game, how can they reach out to you?
Phone number?
Hey, let it drop.
I'm literally in the process of redoing my website because I had everything underneath my name, and so now all my real estate stuff is going to be under the name 8th House Son.
There we go.
And hopefully I will have a website up and running by the end of the year. But if not, just send me a text at 440-391-1184. Say, I need a house shot. I need video. I'd like to
All right,
work
everyone,
together.
I'm giving Sonny 1 month for this link, and I'm going to put it
end
in
of the year,
bio.
right?
Yeah. And then Mike,
It's October 1st, bro.
for anyone that's looking to get in the real estate world and actually have the assistance from a professional, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, and two things. Both if you're looking to buy, sell, or invest, or I'm also the director of the Grow for Keller Williams Living. So if you're looking to get into real estate, make a change, please reach out, 330-607-8592. Also, funny story, my email is clevelandmikeroberts@gmail.com. I gave that to someone today. I was signing up for something. It's okay, what's your email? clevelandmikeroberts@gmail.com. Okay, great. What's your first name? Mike. What's your last name? Roberts. I was like, what? It was kind of funny. I thought it was very simple and explanatory.
Right.
I'm Mike Roberts from Cleveland, but anyways.
Sweet. All right, gentlemen, that's a wrap, and I appreciate you guys coming on.
Thanks,
Thank you
Alex.
so much, man.
Sweet.
Appreciate you guys.